Hello and welcome to Football Friday. And before we get into this, I just want to say sorry for not filming a Football Friday video this Friday. I just had my cast removed, so I didn't really get the chance to film one. But don't worry, there will be one next Friday. Now, for the second episode of the series, which I cover each Premier League club's season, we're going to be going with Spurs. Spurs are a sort of odd team to cover because they've done incredible things this season. One of them would be doing the double over Man City, which is very hard because Man City's team is just overloaded in every position. Where Man City will have an injury, they'll have a world class replacement for that injury. And Spurs managed to do the double on them in spectacular fashion. But Spurs have also had some great downfalls, mainly Southampton and Wolves, where honestly Spurs just didn't really play well in either of those games. But before I talk about what Antonio Conte has done, I want to talk about the Nuno Esperantos era. I can't really call it an era because, to be honest, he did quite poorly. The season started off quite well, actually, because they beat Man City, they beat Wolves both 1-0, and then they'd go on and beat Watford 1-0. But after that Watford win, it just went all downhill. Nuno would face newly Patrick Vieira's Crystal Palace, and they lose 3-0. Okay, maybe that was a fluke. Nope. A couple of days later, 16th of September, they draw 2-2 in the Europa Conference League. Okay, well, give him time. He'd lose 3-0 to Chelsea the match after, and then they'd in the next Premier League match they'd lose 3-1 to Arsenal. That was relegation form at the time because you had lost back to back to back Premier League games. Not only that, you didn't win in the Europa Conference League, a league which contained teams that I'd never even heard of. Like Rennes was one of the teams I had heard of from the French league, which they drew against. But some of the other teams I'd never even heard about. Spurs should have won that league, but they didn't. And yes, they were knocked out of it because some some reason. But in fairness, even if they shouldn't, they should have at least won more games than they did in the Europa Conference League. But thankfully, after Nuno was sacked, they brought in a very, very nice replacement, Antonio Conte, who had won the Premier League with Chelsea. That was very big. Not only that, he just recently won the Serie A title of Inter, a title which Juventus had reigned over for many of years. But at the start of his career at Spurs, it wouldn't be all sunshine and rainbows. In Antonio Conte's first game in charge, they'd only managed to get a 3-2 win over Vitesse. Vitesse, by the way, they are in the Eredivisie and are currently 7th. I didn't realise Vitesse was a club until the Spurs game, and they they put a fight against Spurs. And it wouldn't get that much better in Conte's first Premier League game in charge of Spurs, as it would be a goalless draw against Everton. Everton at the time were very poor. They didn't really perform well under Rafa Benitez, and that's why he was sacked. I think just after Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was sacked. I'm not quite sure on that one, but I think it was closely after Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was sacked. And to be honest, after that nil-nil draw against Everton, it would be a mixed match of results. It would be win after win, and then they'd go on a losing streak. There was even a point where they lost to Chelsea 3 times in 1 month, which I think had never been done, but it had been done in the past, but it was done by Spurs. Spurs had broken their record or kept their record 2 different times. So do with that as you will. Now I'll be swiftly moving on to the transfers that Spurs have made. Firstly, let's go over the outgoings. Spurs made a ton of money with outgoings. That's actually a lie because similar to Crystal Palace, most of them were on free transfers. The likes of Dali Ali, who moved to Everton on a free transfer. Eric Lamela moving to Sevilla on a free transfer. Danny Rose moving to Watford on a free transfer. But they did make some money in other circumstances. Joe Hart to Celtic for 1.8 million. Musa Sissoko to Watford for 3.15 million. Toby Alderweireld to a club I got no clue where he went, but he went for 11 million. And June Forth, who went to Villarreal. I didn't even realise Spurs had him, to be honest. But he was the most expensive outgoing for Spurs. Now on to the ingoings, or the players that are coming into Spurs. And Spurs have made actually quite a few transfers. The most expensive of them being Brian Gill, who is supposed to be a very good youngster. He's gone back to Spain on loan because he's failed to perform. And I do think he can perform really well, as recently in Valencia's 4-1 defeat over Barcelona, he got an assist. So he can perform well. He just needs to find a team which can play well. The second most expensive signing was Emerson Royale, another player from La Liga. And I don't think he's quite hit the works that Spurs fans thought of him. Of course, I've watched him and he's played okay on the attack, but defensively, he's worse than any right back. Like Joe Ward is probably done more defensive stuff than Emerson Royale. And another signing, well, this time from Italy, Rodrigo Bentancur, a player who I think can do wonders for Antonio Conte. He comes for 17 million. Another player from Juventus coming in on loan this time, Dusan Kulusevski, who's recently scored and got an assist in the 3-1 win over Man City. This time going to Atalanta, we have the signing of Christian Romero on loan with an option to buy. A player who, honestly, I take him at the back in a 1-10 formation, then any Spurs defenders at this point in a 10 or a 9-1 formation. He's just that good over all the other ones. And then the last signing on loan is honestly quite weird. Golin was a starting goalkeeper for Atalanta, and he's moved to Spurs to be Hugo Lloris's backup. Hugo Lloris hasn't gotten injured. He doesn't look to be injured. He's fine. So I don't get why Golin would go to the Premier League. He was a first choice keeper for Atalanta. He was a good first choice keeper for Atalanta. So I don't know why he's gone on loan. It's sort of a pointless moving, and he probably could have been big, but he's just wasting his career at this point. If I were to give Spurs a rating this season, I'd probably give them a 6.5 because it's Spurs. This is a club which were in the Champions League final a couple of seasons ago, and now they're sitting not even in the Europa Conference level. They're not even in the Europa Conference League this season because they were knocked out. But I do think if under Antonio Conte can get all the Spurs players to play like they were against Man City, I think Spurs could get into that Europa League spot. I don't think they'll get into top four this season. I think maybe Arsenal or maybe West Ham will get that role because Spurs had a shaky start to the season and they still are quite shaky. So I'll give them a 6.5, but they could increase that if they perform well over the next couple of games. Now, thank you for listening to me waffle about Spurs. If you did enjoy this video, please like and subscribe. And comment if you want to see your team on this series.